Hi, Vernon Hills High School. My name is William Hsu, and I am the serving president for Odonati US. Our organization, along with Odonati internationally as a movement, has been combating human trafficking for the last 20 years. And we were very excited to have Ryan reach out to us because it is precisely due to the effort of individuals like him and his team that we can begin to generate the attention necessary to stamp out trafficking worldwide. I do want to also apologize for my informal attire. I just returned from work, and Odonati US, along with many of our sister organizations, relies on an all-volunteer team for day-to-day operations. So, on to a very brief overview of Odonati as an organization. Odonati actually means soulmate in a local Karnataka language. And if you were to visit our rehabilitation center in Mysore, India, and walk through the gates, you would see very quickly why that is, because you would hear the calls of brother, sister, and that's because the survivors there who are housed there, who range from age 6 to 25, they rely on the staff members, the volunteers, for mentorship and guidance and for love and care. Almost as parents, and they also rely on each other for that companionship. So it's very much like a family, and it's almost necessary to facilitate their process of both physical and mental healing. But that's not the only reason why Odonati is unique. Odonati not only rehabilitates but rescues survivors. Our social workers rely on a very intricate network of informants in southern India to help rescue children as young as 12 from these brothels, from modern slavery. But at the same time, this work, as you may have guessed, is not very easy. Doing social work, doing nonprofit work in some parts of the world, like India, is not the same as in the U.S., whereas in the U.S. it may be considered a very admirable, selfless thing to do. In nations like India, in places like India, it carries a very heavy stigma. Rape victims of sexual violence are often casted aside and disregarded by society. They have no one to turn to, not even their own families, because of the shame it carries. And those who work for victims of sexual violence are stigmatized as well. Odonati once had a huge amount of issue trying to hire at a very competitive wage a staff assistant at our office, because no one in the community would take the job for fear of the shame that it would bring. And that's not the limit of our problems. Odonati works in an environment where many of these brothels are owned in part or have strong connections with corrupt politicians, state officials, and because of this, many of our social workers can find themselves being arrested and detained while trying to uncover these trafficking rings, while trying to rescue these children from these nightmarish places. And it is against this backdrop of socio-political problems that we operate. And this is exactly why it is so important for individuals like Ryan and his team to be part of the movement, for you to be part of the movement, because it is this kind of international attention brought onto the issue that forces the Indian federal government to take actions to root out local corruption, and not only just to allow us to rescue the children, but to stop the cycle of socio-political problems that continue to drive the market for trafficking. The issue of trafficking is simple. I think it's very easy to understand, but it's devastating. There are children today in India who have been sold by their own parents to human traffickers to be used solely for their bodies, day after day. It almost as if they were just a commodity. Imagine that child's sense of self-worth. Now imagine an entire generation of children like that. Imagine the amount of human potential that has been deprived from their respective communities. The would-be doctors, engineers, scientists who are simply not to be. The amount of progress that has disappeared because of the lack of this human potential. When we think about our own American history, we often think that our biggest blunder was slavery. Yet in this increasingly globalized society where our vocabulary for human rights increasingly is um, more uniform, we still have modern slavery alive and thriving more than ever. So my job, and perhaps Ryan's and his team's job, is to convince you that we can end it, and that these children deserve the same education, the same love, the same upbringing, the same future that we've all had, that our children will have. And so my ask is, let's make that happen. So thank you for listening, and thank you for Ryan and his team for supporting Ordinati and the global effort to end human trafficking.